Most parents worry about rashes they see on their children. And most rashes are not measles. But how do you decipher measles and from rashes? And so today at the program, we'll be taking a look at measles in children on Children's Clinic. Welcome. I'll be right back after now. My name is Jumoke Adeswa. Thank you for joining me on Children's Clinic tonight.
Little understanding I have about it is just a kind of disease that is mostly associated with children, and it's very contagious through contact means.
And when these measles comes, it makes them uncomfortable. They will start having temperature, inching of the body, which all those things will start coming out of their body.
Measles can happen to anybody. Children, the body will be very hot. We have body temperature, headache, and sometimes the eye will be yellow. And you see some mumps coming out from the body. That's how you know the symptoms.
The major symptom that can occur when measles is in a baby is one, to have rashes. Second, the baby body will be very hot, and then the baby will be feeling headache. Manti used to use some kind of medicines. There were maybe she would use bitter leaf and one alcoholic. They mix it together to rub the kid, then everything will disappear. We take the kid to the health center, then they describe some medicine for the kids to use.
Today on Children's Clinic, we'll be taking a look at measles. What is measles? How do you as a mother or a child giver recognize measles? You know, the symptoms are so deceptive that you might even think it is malaria, you might even think it is fever. So how do you recognize measles? The best thing to do, like my doctor told me, is to get in touch with a medical doctor who will actually identify it and tell you this is measles. So today in the program, we're taking a look at measles, and we went to town. We met Dr. Folajimi Ogundele, who is a general practitioner who tried to shed light on what measles is. So stand by now as we go to the doctor. Yes, the program is Children's Clinic, and we're taking a look at measles in children. And in the show today, I have Dr. Folajimi Ogundele, who is a general practitioner. Thank you, Doctor, for sparing your time.
Thank you, it's a pleasure to be here.
All right, let's go straight to the topic at hand, talking about measles. I know that as a parent, you know that when your child is running temperature, and maybe you see some glucose in his or eyes, and then you think she's not eating well, and then the temperature is persistent. Sometimes we jump to say that is measles. Is that really measles? What is measles?
Well, measles is a viral illness in children. It's what we call a self-limiting disease, and it's also vaccinated against. There's an initial phase. You will find a child running a fever, feeling weak, not able to eat. Most parents will think, oh, child has malaria, child has this, child has that. But when the rash breaks out, that is really when we know what the problem is. The rash is it has its own peculiar characteristic. It's like what we call a spot diagnosis. You see it and you will know this is measles. Medically, we call it a maculopapular rash. In lay terms, it's a kind of lumpy kind of rash on the child. And that is when you really know it's there. Now, it's self-limiting because it comes on its own and goes on its own. What we try and do is just to make the child comfortable or remove any inconvenience or issue that may arise with it. In non-vaccinated children, it's usually very severe, affecting their eyes, causing severe conjunctivitis, and it could also affect their testes. Well, I can't really call it Apollo. It's more severe than what you call Apollo. Yes, it's a very severe illness that could damage the eyes. Then also another problem that could arise is what we call otitis, inflammation of the testes, which if care is not taken, it could render the child sterile in the future. So those are the harmful or dangerous complications that could arise from measles.
Okay, now let's go back to talk about the self-limiting nature of the illness. I want you to take time to dwell on this. What do you mean by self-limiting?
When I say self-limiting, a good number of viral illnesses will start and stop by their own, just like when you have the flu, or what we say you have catarrh, Even if you don't take medications, in most cases, it will go by itself. Because it's a virus, it's not a bacteria, you understand? So in such a case, you will need an antibiotic, but primarily it's self-limiting in its basic form. So we just try to make the child comfortable as much as possible.
Okay, and I would say that the symptoms are confusing because you just enumerated some of the symptoms of malaria to be that of measles as well. So how would a parent now, a mother, know that these are telltale signs of measles and not malaria?
Well, when you are taking care of children in that category, the child could come, you have fever, child has not been eating fine, you run the malaria, take anti blood film, comes as a child has malaria. In most cases, we need to request for follow-ups because yes, the malaria could come and go, then you could have measles showing up in the form of a rash. At the same time, in some cases, you could actually give maybe just paracetamol to the child and the fever subsides, and within 4 to 5 days after, the rash breaks out.
So could you stay that long in the system for 45 days?
Yes, I can't clearly put a figure on. It's a range of the prodromal period, that is the illness that precedes the appearance of the rash.
Okay.
But it could be as long as that, if not longer.
Okay. Now again, what's the importance of immunization now? Because one would expect that if you're immunized, then you should stay away from measles. But what's the relationship now of immunization and measles in children?
Now, let's look at the basis of immunization. Immunization is not a treatment, it's a vaccination. The reason in most cases is this: there's a weak form of that disease, a very weakened form of the disease is sent into the child. It stimulates the immune system to produce antibodies, or let me say agents that fight against the disease. So that is what we do with immunization vaccine. We sensitize kids, we sensitize the children against the illness because of future purposes. We don't want the first exposure of that child to that illness should not be the strong or the regular strain of virus or bacteria. So we send in the weak one, which is the attenuated or weakened form of the organism, into the child. This will stimulate the child to fight the organisms. So on future occasions, when this thing do occur, or when the child is exposed to this illness, the child is better prepared. The immune system is better ready to fight or combat, to fight. So that's the major mechanism behind immunizing a child or vaccinating a child with vaccines. That's what vaccines are basically. So like I said, it's more severe. You have a more severe response or a more severe situation in unvaccinated children, to the point of having severe conjunctivitis, or you have worsened otitis when the testes will be swollen. So that is why immunization is very, very important.
Okay, now, so how do you, as a mother or mother, manage a child with measles?
Whenever a child has fever, a mother should know how to manage fever before they get to the hospital. Perhaps fever started late in the night and she couldn't come out. She should always have a paracetamol syrup in the house. She should know how to tepid sponge the child, to bath the child with water that will keep the temperature down by every means possible.
With a towel?
And with the towel, that will call heavy sponging. And by the break of dawn, you should take the child to the nearest healthcare center or hospital for proper checkup and attention.
Okay, and then measles is infectious. So what do you do as a mother who has maybe 2-3 children and one is down with the measles? So how do you manage, or how do you protect the other children from being infected?
Well, the first thing that has protected every child, or that should protect every child, is the vaccine, the immunization. The ideal thing we expect is that such children should be isolated. If a child has measles, I don't expect that child to go to school. If it's a child in the crèche, I don't expect him to be in the crèche. If he will be in the school or in the crèche by any means possible, that child should be isolated, and the caregivers should wash their hands and make sure that they don't transfer anything of sort from one child to another. They should keep hygiene practices as much as possible. So we try to say or tell parents that they should try and isolate the child, but in reality, in homes, it's not that practical to do so. But If a child runs through its course, no problem. They will get over it.
Okay, now one very dangerous thing about it that I don't like is that it is self-limiting, it breaks and then it runs its course before it goes. So in essence, it means that measles cannot be prevented.
Let me say, I can't say that can be prevented. What I can say that the complication from measles can be prevented.
Okay.
When we say it's self-limiting, it's what we just mean is, it's not like we have an antiviral drug that will give you and say, okay, just like you have malaria, you take an anti-malaria, you are hypertensive, you can't cure hypertension, but we give an anti-hypertensive drug. In the case of flu or measles, you just have to take care of yourself or take care of the child that the whole issue faces out.
Okay, now having known all of this, so would it be right to say that it is very necessary to maybe admit a child who is under measles in the hospital to be on the safe side?
Well, like I said, it depends on how severe the symptoms are. If we have a child who has measles and is stooling and vomiting at the same time, that will dehydrate the child and that will require resuscitation, rehydration, so the child should be admitted. It's believed at times that measles is common during the humid, dry season, and it's the heat rash might just be a coincidence, or perhaps the mother couldn't properly identify the type of rash it was and just assumed it was a heat rash. A heat rash doesn't get infected to become a measles maculopapular rash. They are not in line together by any means. If there was heat rash prior to measles.
All right. Again, the use of calamine lotion on measles, is it right? Some parents believe it's just good to use alcohol and black soap to rub on the skin, or calamine lotion. Which one?
The alcohol is totally out of it in most cases. Calamine lotion is very okay. Alcohol and cow dung, some other herbal preparation are usually used, which are very harmful to the child. Calamine lotion will help with itching and irritations on the skin, and it's quite safe for the child. Unfortunately, in local settings, there's this belief that children with rashes shouldn't take anything injection. It's a very erroneous belief that a lot of kids have lost their life over. There's nothing of such in practice. If a child is not stable clinically with measles, the child should be admitted in the hospital and isolated there and taken care of.
Right, thank you very much, Dr. Foladimi. It's been nice talking to you. Thank you for shedding light on this topic, measles in children. What your last word of advice would you give to caregivers, mothers, on how to protect or manage a child with measles as well?
Caregivers should be able to isolate children with measles on time, because mothers at times may not be able to identify the rash. It's left for caregivers and health workers to be able to do so, isolate the child and take proper care of that child. And mothers too, as much as possible, would learn a lot if they can actually pick out children with rashes and confirm or inquire from their healthcare providers about the nature of this rash to know what the problem really is.
So in essence, parents and caregivers should be very, very observant a few things in their children. You can't differentiate really from heat rashes and measles. So I think the idea would be for parents to rush to the hospital for the doctor to identify.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Foladimi. Really nice having you on the show.
It's a pleasure.
The program is still Children's Clinic. We're talking about measles in children, and we'll be right back to continue on the program. Do stay with us. That was Dr. Foladimi Okundele, general practitioner, who spoke extensively on what measles is. And I know that by now, you know that measles comes and it goes on its own. Well, it is difficult to believe that, but you heard that from the doctor. And then we also know now that measles runs its course. So it is a disease that takes a time, runs its course. But as mothers, we are bothered. And then you heard from the doctor, all you have to do, take your child to the doctor and let the doctor prescribe, and you follow to the letter the doctor's prescription, and then run away from that old beliefs of having to rub alcohol on the body of the baby. And just like you said, calamine lotion will do the magic, and make sure the temperature of the baby is not high. Another very important thing he said, which I think you should also take note of, is the fact that immunization is key. When you're mothering your child, always immunize your child, as this will put you out of trouble. And when the attack comes, you know that it's going to be mild. It's not going to be something that is going to be harsh. The program is still Children's Clinic, in case you're just joining us. And then let's sit back now and get more informed on what measles is, the symptoms, and how to prevent it. We have this package for you.
Measles, also known as rubella, is a highly contagious respiratory infection that is caused by a virus. It causes a total body skin rash, and it is accompanied with flu-like symptoms, which includes a fever, cough, running nose, and red eyes. Measles is rarely serious in healthy children, although occasionally it can be fatal or lead to brain damage. Before measles vaccination became widely available, measles epidemics occurred every 2 or 3 years, particularly in preschool-aged and school-aged children. Measles is still a common viral infection, affecting about 20 million people and causing 200,000 deaths, primarily in children, especially in developing countries. Since measles is caused by a virus, there is no specific medical treatment for it, and the virus has to run its course. A child who is down with the disease should drink plenty of fluids, get lots of rest, and be kept from spreading infection to others. Over 90% of people who have not been vaccinated can get infected if they get near an infected person. It spreads when people breathe in or have direct contact with virus-infected fluid, such as droplets sprayed into the air when someone with measles sneezes or coughs. During the measles outbreak, an injection of measles antibodies called immune globulin can help protect people who have not been vaccinated if they come into contact with any infected person. However, the most important measure one can take to protect kids from measles is to have them vaccinated according to the immunization schedule prescribed by your doctor. Since certain persons, such as pregnant women, kids with untreated tuberculosis or leukemia with weakened immune system, or who have severe allergic reaction to certain antibiotics, cannot receive the measles vaccines, it is all the more important to make sure children who get the vaccine get it on schedule. Other children are too young to be vaccinated, especially those less than 1 year old, and are usually susceptible to measles. However, researchers assume in their study that infants aged 6 months or younger have some level of measles protection from their mother's antibodies. In Nigeria, measles is a serious disease causing severe morbidity and appreciable mortality. In order to reduce the effect of measles in children in Nigeria, a safe measles vaccine would be of inestimable value in areas where the disease constitutes a grave menace.
To understand measles, we have to understand the immune system. Now, let's focus on the parts of the immune system relevant to measles. The measles virus enters humans through the nose, mouth, or eyes. The measles infection starts in the lungs. Measles is especially good at infecting the body's first line of defense, macrophages, powerful guard cells that protect the lungs from intruders. They enter a cell and take it over. The virus reprograms the cell and transforms it into a dangerous virus production center. Once a cell is filled with viruses, they leave the crippled cell and begin the cycle over again. But the immune system has powerful weapons against virus infections, natural killer cells. These cells basically patrol the body and check other cells for infections. If they find an infected cell, they order it to commit suicide. This is so effective that for the first 10 days or so, you will not even notice that you're infected with measles. And now, the reason why measles is so powerful. After a period of fighting and dying, macrophages alert the brain of the immune system, the dendritic cells. The job of the dendritic cells is to collect samples of intruders, travel to the lymph nodes, and then activate the heavy weapons that eradicate the infection very fast in a team effort. But the measles virus uses a dreadful tactic. It infects the dendritic cells and uses them as a Trojan horse to enter deeper into the body. The infected cells travel to the next lymph node to alert other immune cells. Once it arrives, the measles virus spreads around the virgin T and B cells and infects them. It attacks the very system that evolved to fight it. Now, things happen very fast. The lymph system spreads the virus everywhere and it enters the bloodstream, infecting cells while traveling. Measles infects organs like the spleen, the liver, the intestines, and most importantly, the lungs. The symptoms range from a very high fever, headache, sickness, bronchitis, and of course, a rash. In the lungs, the immune system was doing pretty okay, but now millions of viruses attack a second time and kill countless cells, wiping out the defense systems. In this phase, you start coughing out millions of measles viruses. Measles is so contagious at this stage that if you meet someone who isn't vaccinated, there's about a 90% chance you'll infect them. Without the protective army in the lungs, other bacteria or viruses that would usually not stand a chance can now enter the lungs and develop into harmful parallel infections that can cause pneumonia, the most common way to die from measles. Your body's immune system is now seriously wounded. Various protective systems are hurt and disrupted. The virus spreads everywhere, infecting the skin all over the body. The typical measles rash now becomes visible. And in some cases, the measles virus reaches the brain and causes a brain infection. If it does so, the chances of dying are between 20 to 40% and there may be long-term damage. But your body is far from giving up at this stage and it fights back aggressively. Some dendritic cells survive long enough to activate the antivirus forces of the body. Plasma cells in the lymph nodes start producing billions of antibodies, tiny proteins that mark infected cells for destruction or clump the virus together. Killer T cells flood the body and kill infected cells left and right. After 2 to 3 weeks, the body usually gets the upper hand and overwhelms the infection. But the immune system is now seriously weakened and may take weeks or months to recover, leaving the body vulnerable to other diseases. But if you make it, you are now immune. The immune system remembers the virus forever. Measles is no joke. Although 84% of all humans are vaccinated against measles, 122,000 people died because of the infection in 2014. Some people cannot get vaccinations, either because they're too young, because of chemotherapy or HIV, or because they're allergic to the vaccine. They need the rest of us to stop the disease for them. The measles vaccination is safe, cheap, and available. There are no benefits from having measles at all. You don't strengthen your immune system, and it's not more natural. Most people who don't vaccinate only want the best for their children, which is honorable. But if you ask yourself, am I putting the life of my child and other children at risk by not vaccinating against measles? The sad answer is yes. Yes, you are. Let's not play the blame game though. Let's work together and eradicate this virus. Together, we can get rid of these dreadful monsters and consign them to their rightful place, the history books.
You've heard that, and I know that now you are well informed on how to recognize measles. Although, like the doctor said, you might not know the difference, but now you know the presentation, the symptoms of measles, and you know that it will take or run its course. The program is so Children's Clinic. Well, let's watch this again. It's facts on what measles is. Well, this is all we're taking today on Children's Clinic. I'm sure that you have learnt. I have learnt tremendously on the program today. Now I know what measles is, I know how to manage measles, and I know that I have to quarantine, if you don't mind, the child so that it doesn't spread. And of course, very importantly also, you should know that when your child is down with measles, you don't allow the child to go to school, and then you try and separate him or her from other people's or children in the home so that every other person will not be infected. And monitor the temperature, which is very, very important. And calamine lotion, like the doctor said, is very, very useful. Again, join me next week for yet another informative edition of Children's Clinic. Until then, my name is Jumoke Adesua. Do have a great day. Bye-bye.